football season about to start, week 0 coming up. So we'll get a chance to watch Illinois play, which should be interesting for Indiana fans. I don't expect to see a whole lot. I don't think Wyoming has a lot from what I've read coming back as far as being very tough. So that should not be a hard game. So they should just be able to hand it off, throw some out passes, maybe hit a long one and just use defense and not show a lot. But Indiana also has film on them from last year, which is the same coaching staff, there should be a lot of similarities. Indiana does have an advantage. Illinois they don't have Jack. They don't know. I mean, and I think I'm going to be pretty close, but I'm guessing Indiana's just going to run a very quick hitting, no huddle style offense that is going to be a mix of runs, short passes, and try to hit the long ball.
Right.
That's just it. And I think it's going to end up being Connor Bazelak, but that's a guess because I think he seems a little bit more mobile than Jack Tuttle. And with this offense, I think, and this offensive line's history, you're going to need a quarterback that's a little more mobile. And that's another question, what the offensive line going to do? So with so many questions, I still think that Indiana has a slight advantage over Illinois because of that.
Yeah, they do. I mean, there's some level of mystery, and I get it. And obviously, as you've pointed out many times and got them to talk about, they are. Thanks, Justin. Justin apparently heard my exterminator situation. So we've had mice game coming in. Anyway, point of the matter. Indiana's obviously gone after mystery. Like they've made a point of maintaining some level of mystery. Didn't have a spring game, aren't making anything public this offseason, not naming quarterback until kickoff. Basically, Tom Allen has said, the quarterback will know who he is. The team will know who the quarterback is. However, we're not going to tell you guys until you see him come out. That's when you're going to find out who the quarterback is.
And you know what? I'm fine with that because I would do the same thing if I was in this position because, and I've said it over and over, the importance of this game is probably the most important game. It might be the most important game of Tom Allen's tenure because of what it could lead to as far as the start to a season or the start of a bad season. Winning this game is really, really important.
It is. The only thing I'm not sold on is the value of mystery. I guess that's really what it comes down for me. I don't like. I think they absolutely should do everything they can possibly do to win this game. It's extremely important for them, I think, to get started. To beat a winnable opponent at home, to start the season just after everything that went bad last year. After you go a whole year without winning a Big Ten game, so there's value there. I guess I don't. It's just I don't know that it matters. I am sure that there is time spent by the defensive coordinator having to watch film of multiple guys. How much does that really make a difference? It annoys that guy, for sure. If you're the defensive coordinator, like that's another hour. That's some hours of tape you've got to put in. You got a couple longer nights that week, or you've probably put them in already. I mean, obviously they've had time, but I mean. They know it's two guys. So you watch all the film you can watch on Jack Tuttle, which there's, a handful of games, and you watch a couple, whatever you can get from Connor Bazelak from Missouri. And you watch some Walt Bell, to get some sense and try to piece things together and be real. But, be real about the fact that are you going to know everything? No. Ultimately, this is going to be one of those games, and it's the opener. So this is, I think, pretty typical, where just players have to make plays, I mean, like, you know how football works, you have some sense of what, what tells are going to be on basic plays, know that, yeah, there's a chance that you can get burned by some trick stuff, but ultimately, everybody's seen a spread offense now. Everybody's seen an up-tempo spread offense. I think there was a time when Walt Bell as an offensive coordinator, when he was especially working with Blake Anderson, was really ahead of the game offensively. But everybody is generally in the same place. We've seen the spread offense. There's not a lot new under the sun at this point in what there is. So it's just practice for that the same way you practice for everything else. Again, you're asking for a little bit more time from your defensive coordinator, from your defensive staff as far as film watching. And Indiana's going to have a little bit of advantage there. How major is that? Is that going to be a determinant thing? I doubt it. Is sort of what it comes down to. I don't know that it's going to be a determinant thing. Would it help them to tell us who the quarterback is? No. I mean, like, the only way it would help is, it would help me write a really good feature story, like that. It would have been really cool it would be really cool right now if Tom Allen comes in today and says, actually, such and such, this guy's going to be the quarterback, and Dustin, here's his parents' phone number and all this, and you can go call him and get his whole backstory and get it written by the opener. That'd be nice for me. I would take that, and I guess that would serve them some level of purpose as far as fan enthusiasm is concerned, but probably not that much because the fans are not enthusiastic currently because it's coming off of 2-10. So ultimately, I don't know that there's that much value either way for them. I don't know that it's a difference maker, but ultimately, to your point, it is a really big, important game. So if you're going to be paranoid, this is a good time to be paranoid.
Well, and I think the other thing that people kind of run away with is, well, Indiana doesn't have a starting quarterback. There might be some truth to that, but at the same time, just because Tom Allen isn't announcing it publicly doesn't mean they could have their number one guy a month ago, and they just don't want to, let it go public. But you touched on something I wanted to elaborate on here, and that is, how much time is Illinois really going to spend trying to figure out some of these mysteries with Indiana? To me, Illinois is not a team good enough that they can just roll out their helmets and beat Wyoming. So they're going to have to focus on that game as well. The other aspect is I think Brett Bielema has been doing this long enough to where he knows if we do what we need to do, we're going to put ourselves in a good position. And any of those mysteries are going to be solved by halftime, probably, maybe even after the end of the first quarter. So again, I understand the mystery part of it, but to speak to your point, I just don't think it matters that much. I don't know. By the first 15 minutes, maybe if you get off to a good start and you start out 14-0, maybe you say, hey, those decisions paid off. But if it's a tie ball game or if it's a one-score game, I don't know that it matters that much.
Right, yeah. The only difference is going to be how much coffee does the defensive coordinator at Illinois have to drink this week.
Right,
that's
exactly.
That's where you're going to see a real difference. Is that guy's got to spend a couple hours awake more every night, going through another round of film to watch, to make sure he watches enough Jack Tuttle and make sure he watches enough Connor Bazelak, and obviously the point, as far as like the players themselves, at this point, the entire point for the defensive coordinator is to shrink stuff down to a very digestible amount for the players to take in, so they're not overthinking. So you're not getting them overthinking. They're still going to have just a package of things to watch that they can easily digest. They're not going to, every player on Illinois' defense is not going to be asked to watch every single game Missouri played last year. Some of those guys might do it for their own benefit, but the point is to cut things up so that it's digestible and you're not overthinking things. And so, yeah, the guys who ultimately have to cut that film up so it's watchable, and that's defensive staff, they're having some longer hours, but they're not going to be they're not going to be not sleeping at all. You know what I mean? It's some more time. It is some more hours in the film room, but it's not such an obnoxious amount that these guys are going to be zombies when they show up at the game and they're not even going to be able to call plays. It's not going to be that drastic. It's going to be something. It's not nothing, and I guess it's an advantage. And especially if you're a coach, that seems more major to you because you're the one who's doing it, so you get to annoy the other guy across from you. But ultimately, you're not killing him. He's not going to be falling over and not being able to keep his eyes open on the sideline. It's not going to be that drastic. It's probably a couple more hours a night, an hour or two a night or whatever. But which sucks. But that's it.
Is it safe to say this is, I guess we can't say it's the most important game in Tom Allen's tenure, because who knows what happens after this game, but with the season slated the way it is, with this win, the reason I think it's so important, A, it's a conference game, but B, it's a tough conference game to start the season. If you get that win, that's not like beating Idaho. That's a double dose of confidence. Mm-hmm. Number one, it's a double valued win. Number two, so man, you go into that next game, you're ready, because if you're able to win that game, you did enough to beat a team that already played a game, number one, and is a quality opponent on top of that. So now you've got all kinds of great confidence. You should, without question, win the next two non-con games easily, going to 3-0, now going on the road to a Cincinnati team that is vulnerable, that you can actually beat potentially. And
potentially. Yeah. I'm going to want to see them play up close first. I mean, and they lost some NFL dudes. So,
yeah,
like, you know, between Ritter and Gardner and Bryant, I mean, and Burke, they lost some dudes. So obviously they're going to be, they're going to have to react to that. You know, I mean, obviously as far as biggest in the Allen tenure, I mean, I think first off, he's had some really big ones so far to set himself up in this position.
He's had some big wins, but I don't know that they were big games, as big a game going into it.
He's never been on the ropes. Like this. Like this. Now
that's a great way to put it.
2019, he had to get over the hump, though. You know, like he, you know, after that first 2 years when as head coach, when he didn't go to a bowl game, you know, it was just like he had to do something to get started. So those games in 19 where they got over the hump to produce an 8-4 season, you know, beating Nebraska on the road, you know, the types of games that they, you know, hadn't won in a while, you know, just and to have a complete season that year to get started, and you know. 2020, those still, you know, beating Penn State, beating Michigan. I mean, those are still important games to set him on this track that we could even be. That you were talking about getting an extension, and then it's like, well, how much longer now? But I mean, like to put himself in a position where he's got this much safety and security that even if this year goes bad, you know, obviously he needs this year not to go bad, but you know, he's not out after this year. Even if this year is bad, he's not out after this year. Now, the tough part is going to be just. Arresting that slide, if you will. So this game is really important. I don't want to like downplay it, but obviously the narrative for Tom Allen can change. It can go a lot of different directions from here. And yeah, it's altogether possible that 2021, you know, that disappointment ultimately leads to his dismissal in the long term. But you know, you don't know that yet, and you know, some of those other games were really important too. But yeah, it is really important just to get started, just to get because it's a conference game. Because it's a winnable conference game, because it's a winnable conference game at home. For all those reasons, it's an opportunity that they really can't afford to let go past. And shoot, I mean, Western Kentucky ain't no lock, you know. I mean, and I know Western Kentucky lost a bunch too, you know, because they had a bunch of those really, you know, that tough receiver, the quarterback Zap. You know, they lost a bunch of those guys too, but I imagine, I think their offensive coordinator is still the same guy, the guy they got from Houston Baptist. And they're going to fling it around and play really, 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 really fast like they did last year. And they almost wore that in their defense out. I mean, those guys were sucking wind at the end of that game. Don't forget that thing was tough. That thing was close. And again, they lost a lot of the most talented guys from that group, but that's not a walk either. But yeah, like, they should, if they beat Illinois, they should start 3-0, and Cincinnati becomes possible, and Nebraska becomes possible at that point. You know, that's what opens up if you win this game. It's really important. But they could still win this game and go 5-7, or 4-8 or whatever. And you know, like it sets them up nice, but it doesn't lock anything in for them either.